image of a middle-aged man isolated, struggling financially, and lacking any safety net or support system reoccurs throughout your recent articles. What do you believe are the primary forces driving men into these isolated, economically strained circumstances?
It's interesting that you notice that pattern in my writing because I guess that's true. But I think part of it is that hit me personally because I have not that long ago been one of those men. Um, Especially when I was sort of at my end of my leash in Chicago. Before I met my wife, I was an isolated middle-aged man that did not, I was broke. I was getting to the point where my utilities were about to be shut off. I had a pal of mine come and sleep on the floor on an air mattress that was paying me $100 a month. So this was 6 years ago. So I'm not that far from being one of these people. So it comes from a personal place. But so I'm sorry. What was actually your
I'm sorry.
question? Just gonna talk about myself.
No. Like what are the what is impacting these men right now to be so isolated and kind of downwardly mobile? You gave us a few articles, and also in your Jacobin article you linked some other stuff, which is literally where I got it from. I just was
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
reading your links that you put in there, and you wrote another thing about JD Vance, who also kind of speaks to this as well,
yeah.
because he's
Um,
hillbilly adjacent, as he likes to say.
Well, there's a few things that are going on. I mean, one is that we're still mostly living in this post-industrial economy where there's still a big premium for going to college. And
Hmm.
when I talk about like a working class and non-working class, like in these pieces, um, the metric I use is men who do not go to college as opposed to the ones who do, because there is a big divide between college graduates and non-college graduates. And so, in general, when we're talking about the working class, we're just using that, not necessarily like the Marx definition.
Yeah.
But over the last 20 years, um, there has been this big shift where it used to be that men went to college more than
Mhm.
women, but in the last several years, that has changed a lot to the point where the most recent statistics that I've seen, it's actually 60-40 now, women compared to men. And even in a lot of these big cities where there's a lot of college graduates, women are now out earning men in 22 different cities, including like New
Wow.
York, LA, Chicago, San Francisco. Um, there's a lot of these like post-industrial like information economy heavy cities now where, yeah, I mean, because we've been told over and over about the gender wage gap, but um that that still holds strong in some like more rural areas.
Hmm.
But in a lot of big cities, it's actually in DC, I want to say it's something like women make 110% of what men do. um so I think that is a big part of it, is just the nature of work, and that a lot of men are not. They used to be, more of the breadwinners, obviously, and that the old stereotype was, the men who go to work, provide for the family. The women tended to stay home. Now that changed more, 2 generations ago, but those trends have continued to shift where, I mean, a lot of women are now the main breadwinners, like including, I mean, there's so many of my friends where the woman has the high earning job.
Yeah.
I have a friend who is like, oh, he considers himself half retired, and he does a lot of the childcare. And so there's just a lot of social shifts that have happened through that, and men just are not handling it well.
I agree with the not handling it well, because I think it's also societal,
Yeah.
and a lot of societies aren't handling it well. And as social media really does dictate the, kind of certain culture norms that we want to act like, oh, I don't let social media tell me what to do as I watch social media all the time. One of the things is like value of a person,
Yeah.
high value man, high value woman. And the idea of like, I don't think most people understand the reason why women were supposed to stay at home and take care of the children. You know, it's a way to continue to have kids during a booming economy. And then you have kind of fixed in-home care because that is another source of labor, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, as you will find, to to take care of a child and a house. So as those roles, I wouldn't say shift, but as two income households really start to become the norm in the 80s, as you were describing earlier, um, still men earned more money, were kind of more so the breadwinner. Um, and now we're looking at a situation where there is no job that's going to save you from your mediocrity. Like there was a factory job that existed. There was just some job somewhere in your city or your area that you could go to where you could probably buy a little home and maybe your wife worked a little bit too, but that's even gone. So being
Yeah.
mediocre
Well,
can't get
yeah,
by anymore.
and like as the nature of work shifts and um more work becomes more tenuous and you get more like the uberization of employment, where you're just a like an independent contractor. um as like, in my parents' generation, a lot of the men stayed in the same job for 30 or 40 years. My
Yeah.
dad retired, was able to work for the state, and he was able to retire um in his late 50s because he stayed at the same job from the stability. And a lot of men got a lot of identity out of their job,
Mm.
but as um good jobs go away and they become more precarious and they become, more, you feel more disposable. There's a bit of a loss of identity just there with work.
And that's interesting that you mentioned like the good jobs because like let's talk about some of these jobs that just aren't what they used to be. Besides just deindustrialization, I think everybody starts there, myself included. Trucking for the longest time was an industry that if your pops drove a truck, you probably lived okay. Not so much anymore. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely teaching. For a long time, when I went to back in my day, my teachers were homeowners, or at the very least, they lived in the city where I went to school. If you teach in like, I don't know, anywhere in the peninsula in the Bay Area, where the hell are you gonna live? They were even trying to get, subsidized housing for teachers there because it's just so expensive to rent when you live in Silicon Valley.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned trucking because that's also an industry where it used to be that you like could buy your own truck or you worked for like a company where you had a truck. But a
Yeah.
lot of times now you basically rent it, and you're like just more of an independent contractor. A lot of these guys don't even work for companies.
Yep.
They just get paid per load. Uh
Per
and
mile
they
or
have like
something.
no
Yeah.
security. I mean, that industry has been definitely um Uberized. I have a nephew actually that's been talking about going to into trucking, and he doesn't have a college degree. He's
Yeah.
18, and I actually encouraged him to go to the military to do truck driving instead of the industry at large because it's pretty miserable. It's gigified. Doesn't pay like it used to.